Hello and welcome to April 6th. We are in the last month of the semester pretty much. We got finals and all that fun stuff and graduation coming up first few weeks in May. And uh, well, last week I told you I was going to Dallas Baptist University and I was going to be interviewing and having a campus tour. By the time I left there, they offered me the position. So I am now a full time professor of criminal justice, a full professor of criminal justice, and the director of the Dean Institute of Criminal Justice Leadership at Dallas Baptist University. I start my first day there is June 1st. So, unfortunately, this will be the last class I teach at the University of Arkansas, Fort Smith. Part of the policy at Dallas Baptist is I cannot adjunct for any other universities while I am employed at Dallas Baptist. It has been a blast and will continue. I've got I'm really excited about this position and I'm hoping that everything goes well and that we are good. Okay, so let me reiterate one more time. And I've talked about this for the last 6 weeks. You must have your original post, your original discussion post turned in by Wednesday, your responses by Friday, and then your replies by Sunday. Okay. If you do not have them turned in on that schedule, I will take points away from you. No, I'm not going to make it retroactive. But please make sure that you are participating in the timetable as I expect. Also, make sure that you use a list of sources in your discussions. The discussion post, although is a little laxed, it still needs to follow APA citation requirements, which require in-text citations and a list of sources. There are no opinions at this level in academia. Okay. Everything that you have, every opinion that you have, every thought that you have has been formed and influenced by something that you've read, something you've been told. Even if you're using an in person citation, in person communication, you still need to cite that source and cite that information. Okay, so I will get all the discussions graded. I'll check the quizzes, but let's share my screen. All right, so we're sharing our screen, and those are messages. I just sent a message letting you guys know that I'm going live. Scroll down here. I think I have it listed as week 12. We are actually only in week 11 because they didn't count spring break, but I did. So this week we're talking about terrorism from hometown security to homeland security. It starts today. The lesson plan is there. I'll put this lecture here as well. Um, the PowerPoint that I'm about to go over is here. The extra sources so that you can use these extra sources in your discussion forums to help form your opinion on the question that's posed in the discussion. The quiz is visible to everybody. Your annotated bibliography is due this week. So make a point that you turn in your annotated bibliography. And there's the instructions for the annotated bibliography. I need you to take a minimum of 6 sources that you're using for your paper. I need you to put it in proper APA format, uh, in alphabetical order, and then you need to give me a synopsis of about no more than 250 words per citation that you're using. I'm going to be looking for a minimum of 6 citations. You can use more than that. You can annotate more than that. It's important. Every article that I read, I annotate it, and I have a personal um, annotated bibliography that I update from time to time to keep track of what I've read and what I've learned, so that I can turn around and use that. Terrorism is an important subject this week, but your annotated bibliography is due by Sunday. And then this week's discussion. This week's discussion is which is the greater threat, domestic or international terrorism? Defend your answer. Okay. And we have domestic terrorism, and what we mean by domestic or international, I'm sure my PowerPoint will get to that. So I'll end up repeating it. Domestic terrorism is defined by homegrown domestic terrorism. So this would be things like the Unabomber, things like the Atlanta abortion clinic bomber, the Oklahoma City bombing, and things with what's classified as the militia, classified as hate groups. These agencies, the execution of James Byrd, I would consider an act of domestic terrorism. But we'll get into all of that here in a minute. And international terrorism is terrorism that is influenced by international agency. Okay? For example, since the start of this war 5 weeks ago, we've had several mass shooting events. Austin, up in Columbus, there's been events, there's been terrorist attacks committed inside the United States, and they were all influenced by Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas, and that is international terrorism. And my opinion on which is the greater threat is going to probably right now lay on the lines of international terrorism, because lost my mouse. There it is. Because of the threats between the leadership in Iran and President Trump this past weekend. So, from hometown security, the workmanship of the local police officer, the county deputy, the state police investigations, all the way up to Homeland Security, which isn't funded at the moment. Our cybersecurity employees are not getting paid. Our TSA employees are not getting paid. Our Coast Guard is not getting paid. Those people who are charged with protecting our country are currently not getting paid. And the Straits of Hormuz are closed, and President Trump used some foul language, and he threatened Iran to open the straits, and it's not going well. The leadership in Iran has called for all true Persians, true Muslims, to pick up arms against the United States and Israel. So we can expect the activation of sleeper cells inside the United States, increasing the terrorist activities within the United States. Looking at history, I may or may not. I have several other terrorism PowerPoints that I have created over the years. I may, especially one that specifically defines domestic terrorism. I'm going to put these up in the week, and if you decide to look at those, I'm going to leave that up to you. So September 11th, 2001 unified America and the American people in a way that had not been seen in the United States since, well, the PowerPoint says never seen, and I don't believe the never seen. I think that the unity that this country showed on December 8th, 1941, was equivalent to what we saw on September 12th, 2001. Our country embarked in a new era of policing, and this policing has gone um, to Homeland Security. It's given us a heightened focus and increased attention placed on terrorism, which has not absolved local law enforcement of its duties. Okay, there is a need to balance crime fighting with counterterrorism efforts. And what we're finding is that this heightened security mainframe or mindset that we find within the community, within the country, is a little bit scary. Um, and we're focusing on security where everybody becomes a threat. And we need to do better in balancing this. And ICE is probably at the forefront of this because ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, Customs and Border Patrol, um, Homeland Security are at the forefront of protecting our country from international and foreign threats. And they take their job seriously. Government priorities, we need to improve our vigilance. We need to increase our preparedness. And one of the things that we saw, or what I saw lacking in our discussions last week, is the lack of discussion on preparedness. How do you prepare for an emergency? Okay, so I had a dream the other couple months ago, and I know I'm not trying to claim I'm a prophet or anything, but I had a dream a couple months ago that we went to war with Iran. Well, that's come about. And in this war with Iran, several uh, ocean barges that carry all of the sea crates line themselves up along the East Coast, along the Gulf Coast, and they had all of these sea crates along the edges, like you see, with the sea crates stacked 5 and 6 high. But in the middle, it was hollow. And we were at war with Iran, and all of these barges started lining up along the East Coast and the Gulf Coast. And then they started firing ballistic missiles into the country from these sea crates because Iran does not have the missile capability to make it to the United States. But if they were somehow to get these launchers and these missiles to the coast of the United States, then they could launch and they could hurt us. And this is what my dream was about. So, how do we prepare for this? How do we prepare for an incident like that? This would not actually be an act of terrorism. It would be an act of war. And because we are at war, declared or not, we are at war with Iran. How do we prepare our local communities for such an attack or a terrorist attack from an international community, or like what happened in Oklahoma City, a domestic attack? Um, we need to reduce our vulnerabilities. We need to strengthen our resolve. A few years ago, there was some information that was gathered that right after the terrorist attack in Baslan in Russia, that the Hamas and Hezbollah were going to imitate this terrorist attack that was in Beslan, Russia, and do the same thing here. So what we saw happen was all the schools increased the height of their fences. They increased they hardened the targets, which is really weird because we still have school shooters going into schools and shooting schools up when we're supposed to have single entry access. Everybody enters the school through the front door. Everybody, there's a 5 or 6 foot fence that surrounds the school area, so that if we see somebody climbing the fence, we have time to respond to it. We've increased the number of resource officers on our police station, from the police department into our schools. A lot of school districts now have their own independent police department to protect and serve and protect the schools, where in the past this hasn't happened. That's why we're also seeing a move or a change from attacking public schools to the private schools, because the private schools don't have the law enforcement presence anymore. And we need to strengthen our resolve and strengthen our assets and strengthen those high value targets from attack. Okay, and then we need to confront the threat. We don't need to respond. We need to confront. We need to. Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, he's the director of Kill University. And he says that, and again, I'll put this PowerPoint up, but he says to protect the schools, we need to be prepared to eliminate the threat, not just confront the threat. Okay, so in 1999, when we had our major first school shooting, we barricaded and we tried to wait, and we went slowly through trying to rescue people. And that's not how we need to do this anymore, and that's not how we do this anymore. As long as there's an active shooter and we can hear the rounds, law enforcement is to go to uh, the threat, to the gunfire, and to eliminate and stop the killing. Once we can stop the killing, then we can stop the bleeding. And this is the new philosophy that we have about confronting the threat and not trying to sit back and hope that the threat stops itself. Law enforcement is now required to go stop and confront the threat, eliminate the threat. There's no single universal accepted definition of what terrorism is. The common elements is physical violence against non-combatants, focusing on civilian populations and children. It is to create a climate of fear that comes from different aspects, religious, political, or social change. But the one thing that all terrorism has in common is the desire, the hope to change policy and to change the way that the government addresses things and approaches things. Okay, FBI depends on the origin or the base of this terrorist group or the objectives of the terrorist group. Domestic terrorism is based here in the United States and it has no foreign influence. Okay? International terrorism has an international influence. It's come from international beliefs or international bases. The attack on 9/11 came from Al Qaeda, which at the time was hiding out in Afghanistan. But the foundation of Al Qaeda came from Saudi Arabia. That's my work phone. Excuse me. And it's a scam. Chaplain Fisher, may I help you? Hi, John. This is Dr. Chaplain John Fisher. I am on a state phone, which is always recorded and sent to Secret Service for scammers who are trying to. He hung up. All right. So there's a dual threat, really, basically, that the FBI looks at, and that is homegrown violent extremists and then radicalization. Okay, has like the recent shootings that we've had, the recent mass murder events, active shooter events that we've had, they've been radicalized by Hezbollah, Hamas, Iran, the Liberation Front of the Freedom of Palestine. And this radicalization has increased activities. Okay. So the organizing principles and framework The right wing extremists. A lot of them are called the militia, but primarily they're the sovereign citizens. These are people, the right wing extremists do not believe in governmental control or governmental activities. Okay? Left wing extremists are like the eco terrorists, uh, pro life extremists who are also domestic, they're right wing, and they would like to blow up abortion clinics and kill abortioners to protect life. A little oxymoronic, but hey, there we go. Animal rights activists like Greenpeace, environmental extremists and eco-terrorism, also Greenpeace, and ALF, the Animal Liberation Front, and ELF, the Earth Liberation Front. These environmental terrorist groups are some of the most dangerous terrorist groups that we find. Um, there's a new movie that came out with Leonardo DiCaprio. It's on Netflix. I think it's on Netflix. It's called The Battle Another Day. And these were eco terrorists that were running around. They were also part of the Black Bloc. If you get a few extra minutes, you might want to look for this movie. It's called To Battle Another Day. It has Leonardo DiCaprio in it. It's got a lot of stars in it, but it's about eco terrorism. So, terrorism is a new kind of war. It's an asymmetric war. Okay. It's completely different. John F. Kennedy talked about it back in the 60s when he was president. He said, we're facing an era of new war. It's it's not a war where you put armies on a battlefield. It's a war of special operations. And he established the special operations. Okay. It's where a much weaker opponent takes on a stronger opponent. We saw this with the Irish Republican Army in the early 1900s fighting the British Empire. We saw this with um, Israel trying to establish their own independent country against Britain. We see it with the Palestinians against Israel. We saw it with the Mau Mau against British occupation in Africa. These, and then we see it with Hezbollah and Hamas and these other countries, groups fighting against the United States. There's a refusal to fight head on. Okay. If you remember the Mel Gibson movie called The Patriot, he always targeted the leadership. They targeted supply chains. He did not fight head on. He couldn't fight head on because he couldn't defeat the great and powerful British Army at the time. It's unpredictable. You don't know when these attacks are going to come, and it's damaging. Okay. And it has this philosophy that comes out of Sun Tzu's Art of War and the death by a thousand cuts. It's not a major offensive, but it's little minor attacks. And these minor attacks cause a greater psychological harm to the country because you're not only targeting the infrastructure and the means of supply for the army, you're attacking civilian populations, and it makes the civilian populations nervous and scared. So they have unconventional armed attacks, explosives and bombs, suicide bombers, martyrs who go on suicide missions shooting people. They use car bombs, vehicle borne improvised explosive devices. These use stealth and security. They do not have, they have improvised roadside devices to where they go off when somebody steps on them or they drive over them in attempts to kill a little bit of it at a time to harm morale and to make things worse. The use of weapons of mass destruction, okay, biological agents, bioterrorism, agroterrorism, chemical agents, nuclear terrorism. Okay, so all of these different ways, these different methods to inflict fear upon the populace is what's used. Um, State based terrorism, also. So they collaborate with organized criminal groups. They get financing from Iran. They smuggle stolen goods and contraband. They use charitable groups. There's a group called CARE that has been accused of um, wrongdoing. Okay, wealthy Arabs sympathetic to the group's cause, investigating charities and such. Better Business Bureau, and I'm about to put you on a break for a minute so I can go get the gate. So just hold on a second. I'll be right back. So sorry about that. Thank you very much. We don't have water well system out here because the water that's under the ground is sulfuric, and we don't get a whole lot of rain, so we have to have water delivered. And Stan, the water man from Clear Creek Water Supply, was here delivering water to one of the other residents. Okay, so the purpose and focus for terrorists is body count. They want media coverage and they want body count. So they look for high occupancy structures. They look for targets where significant numbers of lives are affected, structure containing dangerous substances, the high use portion of infrastructures. They're also looking for soft targets. They're looking for symbolic targets. Okay, so the blowing up and flying planes into the World Trade Center didn't mean a whole lot, except to Al Qaeda because it was symbolic. Okay, so the chosen targets of Al Qaeda on 9/11 was the World Trade Center. So they flew planes into both towers of the World Trade Center because the primary god of the United States is money. And the World Trade Center is where all that money was made and it was passed and it was traded, and it just took care of world trade. So they targeted that. Um, yes, it killed a lot of people. It was high occupancy. It caused the economy to stumble, but really it was symbolic. The third plane flew into the Pentagon, and the strength and the military of the United States is renowned worldwide. We are the world's only superpower. So, trying to attack the Pentagon um, did not affect our military readiness at all, but it was a symbolic attack against the the god of war that the United States worships. The fourth plane, according to conspiracy theory, the fourth plane did actually get crashed into a cornfield. But the thought is, and the idea was that they were trying to fly that plane into the White House or Congress um, in an attempt to um, attack those symbols of American supremacy. They look for soft targets. They look for targets that are easy to access, targets that are easy to manipulate. So attacking schools would have been an easy thing to do 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but not so much anymore. And now even the school shooters are looking at and turning to private schools for their attacks because it's a soft target and it's hard to get it access. And so in response to terrorism, in response to 9/11, we created the Department of Homeland Security. Okay, and the job of Department of Homeland Security, it reorganized the government, and it prevents, or the hopes is to prevent terrorism um, in on American soil and enhancing the security of the country, securing and managing our borders, enforcing and administrating our immigration laws, safeguarding and securing cyberspace, and ensuring resilience to disasters. And right now, our government is split on whether or not they want to fund the Department of Homeland Security. Granted, ICE has already been funded. It was funded in another law, the big, beautiful bill. So all we're doing right now is prohibiting the funding of those agencies that protect our country, protect our internet, protect our cybersecurity. They protect our borders. You know, ICE is paid for. ICE is taken care of. And what we're doing now is we're suffering from uh, pride and a demand to do something with ICE, um, as opposed to protecting our country from attacks. And if the Coast Guard isn't floating and not protecting the coast because they're not funded, then if this dream I had comes true and they start shooting missiles into the interior of the United States from these sea crates, these sea barges, we're going to be in a world of hurt. A couple of weeks ago, President Trump announced that Iran was sending us 8 ships filled with oil. You know, when I heard that in the news, I quickly remembered my dream. So the USA Patriot Act is enhanced federal powers to using the tools that were already in place. They reorganized the government. It also dictated information sharing between federal agencies themselves and also filtering down that information down to the state and local government. Okay, it increased the penalties for terrorism, and the controversy over the USA Patriot Act continues through today. The use of the USA Patriot Act um, is the power that ICE is currently using to enforce border security and to eliminate and to remove criminal illegal aliens from this country. Okay, so the responsibility and authority of Homeland Security is understanding of typical stages in a terrorist attack. We need to understand and identify the enemy. We use intelligence gathering and sharing. We use the National Criminal Intelligence Sharing Plan to share all of this information between the CIA and the ATF and the FBI and the DEA and the Texas Rangers and the state police and Fort Smith Police Department. Okay, the Intelligence Reform and Terrorism Prevention Act of 2004 established fusion centers. Okay, so now we've got fusion centers across the country. Okay, and this is one of the things that I'm going to be doing as the director of criminal justice leadership at Dallas Baptist University is become a fusion center so that we can get state, county, local law enforcement, courts, and corrections all working together in the same direction to increase the effectiveness of criminal justice and to decrease the amount of recidivism that we have in the state of Texas. Okay, so the first line of defense is local law enforcement. Okay, so the first line of defense responds to suicide bombers. It responds to attacks of weapons of mass destruction. Uh, we have lessons learned from the Mumbai uh, explosions. We need to heed the warning signs. Okay, I wrote a paper in 1999 uh, predicting the attack in 2001 on 9/11, and I told them that that the United States as a society, not just a government, but as a society, has breached the ethical and moral rules of Islam, and we are forcing this mentality into the Muslim world, and we are going to have a response. In 1996, Osama bin Laden declared war on the United States, and it was in response to Desert Storm and what myself and thousands of other Americans did in Iraq and Kuwait. Uh, we defiled Mecca uh, in Saudi Arabia. And not only Saddam Hussein, but Osama bin Laden declared war on the United States. And he said that because of the actions of the United States in Iraq, that he issued a fatwa from God, from Allah, um, proclaiming that we needed to kill Americans. So that was the justification that they used. The first line defense is law enforcement, okay, is our city police officer, our county deputy. Um, we need to heed the warning signs. When when a terrorist group says they're going to do something, we need to believe them and we need to prepare for it so that we can ensure that it doesn't harm America. Okay? Leadership must be proactive. Okay, prevention is our deterrent. Is deterrence. Okay, strengthening, having a presence is the deterrence. Okay, I get into this debate about open carry and concealed carry. Okay, and the debate is, well, if you open carry, they're going to see that you have a gun and they're going to target you first. It's best to have concealed carry. This way you can respond to the bank robbery or the store robbery or to whatever act of violence that's going on. I believe in prevention. Okay, if you see that I've got a gun, it's probably going to deter you because you're going to go down the street and you're going to say, well, this guy doesn't have a gun. There are no guns here. I'm going to attack there. This way I've saved lives from the beginning because I'm prepared. Okay. I am not responding to an incident. I am prepared so that it deters an incident. Okay. And the displacement theory of policing, which we discussed at the beginning of the semester, is effective here because they're looking for soft targets. And if the target is hardened, they're going to move down the street. If we've got a DWI checkpoint at the corner of First and 16th, at the corner of Main and 16th, people are going to go a different way home. Okay. It's going to delay, it's going to defer, it's going to displace the criminal activity. So if I'm in a store and this uh, guy is coming in to attack the store, to blow up the store, he is going to, and he sees my firearm and my weapon, he's not going to force the issue. He's just going to go down he's going to go down the block. He's going to go somewhere else because I might kill him before he gets the opportunity to blow himself up and to hurt other people. So, the initiatives to assist in the fight against terrorism is a strong border. We need increased border security. Without increased border security, we open it up for terrorists to come into the United States, especially through the southern border. Community vulnerability assessment and mythology. Okay. And this is pretty much what ICE is doing right now. We're looking in the communities, we're looking into the individual communities for the assessment of whether or not there's a threat of terrorism or a threat of some foreign entity. And this is where ICE is going, and they're tracking down, they're finding the criminal illegals, and they're removing them. Okay. By hindering this, you're leaving possible terrorists in the street. Okay. The Terrorist Screening Center, it's a government's terrorist watch list. Okay. Have you done anything on Facebook lately that would cause people to think that you're a danger or a threat? You're going to end up on this watch list. The National Infrastructure Protection Plan. It's a comprehensive risk management framework which is intended to protect our bridges. It's intended to protect our energy supply, our water supply, our food supply, and our distribution systems. The Memorial Institute for the Prevention of Terrorism is a counterterrorism center. Okay? It focuses, it listens to the chat rooms, it listens to the chatter on the internet, and listens to the warnings that are being put forth by the different terrorist groups. Okay? Again, there's the Food Protection Defense, which safeguards, and I've already discussed this, it safeguards the security of our food infrastructure and our food delivery system and our water systems and our water delivery systems. And then you've got the National Incident Management System, and this is like a ComStat. You know, it tracks terrorist incidents at a national level, so we can see if there's an increase or an uptick in the amount of terrorism that's going on in the country and what we need to look for. So media gains a tremendous viewership. Okay, when this war started, and I do this every day. Every day on my way to work, I listen to the news. I listen to the news on the way home from work, and then when I get home, I go to Roku and I watch the different news channels and see what kind of information is being spread. Okay, this type of, if it bleeds, it leads. Newscasting pleases sponsors because people are going to listen to it more. Okay. And then it has a contagion effect. Have you seen what's going on? Have you seen this? Have you seen that? You know, we got 24-hour coverage of mass murder events. Even though the event is over, we have 24-hour coverage for days, if not weeks, trying to share all the information that was learned. And terrorists rely on this coverage because it creates a climate of fear. Okay, it brings attention to their cause and what they're doing, and they get to spread the information that they want to spread. How is this related to the American way of life? Well, there's a concern for civil liberties, and this is what we've seen: the counter protests to the activities of ICE, because they're claiming that we're violating civil rights. The two people that were killed by ICE were not illegals. They were not criminals. They just, they interrupted and they fought back against the police, which did make them criminals, which did justify the use of force. We also see a retaliation or discrimination against the people of the Middle East. We see a lack of cultural awareness. We see language barriers, which all increase distrust, and they cause fear and trembling amongst the people. Okay? So we want to empower communities. We want citizens corps. We want our police officers to get out of their cars and focus on community-oriented policing and talk to the people about what's going on. If you see something, say something. Has been going on forever. If you see something that is out of question or out of, if it's suspicious, make sure that you say something. You can report it to the Nationwide Suspicious Activity Report. Okay. And then we need to focus on hometown security. So the threat of terrorism in the United States is a reality. It's not a question of if they will, it's a question of when will they. Most definitions have common elements. As a result of 9/11, the Department of Homeland Security was established. The USA Patriot Act was approved, signed into law, and the first line of defense against terrorism is the police officer. So that is our lecture for today. Where's my mouse? I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And we're going to move on from here. All right, so we are at 47 minutes, which is about right. So I'm going to let you guys go. I did not put last week's video on YouTube because of my talking about my possibility of getting a new job. I'm not going to put this week's up either onto YouTube until I have notified my employer and all those who need to be informed about me going to Dallas Baptist University. So I'll see you guys in the forums. I will see you in the discussions, and I'll get everything graded in the next couple days. Do not forget to turn in your annotated bibliography.